Well, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Defense Logistics Agency's first nutrition panel discussion, hosted by the DLA Headquarters Fitness Council and the DLA Resiliency Council. My name is Bethany Sweatman from DLA Installation Support, Fort Belvoir, and I will be your MC today. At this time, I would like to ask you to silence all personal electronic devices as we are live streaming this event. The theme for today's discussion is Debunking Dieting Myths, Practical Nutrition for Everyday Living. We would like to extend a special welcome to our participants on today's panel. Dr. Natasha Chevet, Ms. Karen Hawkins, Ms. Melissa Walker, Dr. Jonathan Scott, and Dr. Tricia Pasota. Our moderator for today's discussion is Lieutenant Colonel Janelle McCauley. Please join me in giving them a warm welcome. At this time, I would like to introduce DLA's Chief of Staff, Dr. Renee Roman. As a member of DLA's senior leadership and champion of the resiliency efforts at DLA, Dr. Roman is heading an effort to ensure employees are provided the resources, programs, and processes that support their personal efforts to become more resilient. Fortifying workforce resiliency is Goal 2 of the DLA Strategic Plan 2015 to 2022, People and Culture. DLA's leadership recognizes that the agency's success depends on the readiness of the workforce to meet evolving mission requirements. DLA will have 4 focus areas to help employees become more resilient, and one of those areas is nutrition and physical fitness. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Roman to the stage.
Well, good morning. Good morning to those of you who are physically here and those of you who are joining us from around the virtual net. You know, weathering the blizzard this weekend really gave me a chance to think about what we really mean when we talk about resiliency. The winter storm in many ways forced us to have to make changes, have to adapt to things. It caused a certain amount of stress to all of us. All of a sudden we had to either change a work schedule, or we had kids at home that we thought would be gone, or we had to go to grocery stores with empty shelves. But it caused a little bit of that sense of we had to then adapt and bounce back from a changing environment and a changing situation. So sometimes we think about resiliency and we think about it from a standpoint of these major life changes, and we think, okay, I'm good. There's nothing major happening. But resiliency is really dealing with not only the major changes, but the minor ones, like, snowmageddon out there, or stress at work, or different kinds of things. It doesn't have to be a big major thing that causes us to have to be able to bounce back, react, be adaptive, and be resilient. So when you think about that in the broader context, you begin to understand why it is important for us to be able to have a capability to be resilient. Because while the big challenges probably aren't happening to us every day, thank God, those little challenges, whether they're at work or whether they're at home, are constantly happening. So the idea of being able to fortify your resiliency to give all of us, you, me, our families, all of us, the ability to be able to maintain strength and be resilient really is important. So when we look at the 4 focus areas that we have established as we approach resiliency and try to fortify resiliency in the agency, we're looking at the areas of mental, physical, social, and spiritual health, because each one of those are a pillar that collectively helps us fortify our ability to adapt, react, bounce back when those challenges happen, whether they're big or small. Many people depend on us. Whether it is our family, our friends, or our coworkers, they depend on us every day. So our ability to be able to take care of ourselves becomes very important. And that's a bit of what today's session is about, is offering tips for us to take an aspect of taking care of ourselves from the nutrition and the health, and being able to blend that into what we do and how we think about what we do. I think many of you have heard the senior leaders say that our DLA workforce is really our strongest resource. And so we don't want to just say it. We want to put the action to the words to show that we really believe that you are our strongest workforce. And as such, we have many programs and services that we have available around the agency to help fortify your personal resiliency. At our headquarters complex, we have our Health and Fitness Council who have worked to put together this program. Similarly, across the enterprise at all of our field locations, there are also concerted efforts to make sure that we link resources and programs and processes to help you in regards to fortifying your resiliency, whether that be in the aspect of health and wellness, or whether it be in the mental or the spiritual, any of those. We're constantly looking now to really kind of bring those programs to the forefront to help you link in. So this panel today on practical nutrition for everyday living is a great opportunity to learn how to adopt and sustain those behaviors. And I'm thrilled that all of you have made the commitment to join us today with our goal of fortifying your personal resiliency. As leaders, we are committed to helping our team strengthen resiliency by ensuring that we provide resources, programs, and processes to support your personal efforts. Lieutenant General Bush, as well as the entire senior leadership team, view workforce resiliency as a key priority, not only because a resilient team is more productive, and they are, but also because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for every one of you sitting out there. It's the right thing to do for each one of us who are senior leaders personally. It is really the right thing to do for us collectively. So I'll get off the stage and I'll turn it over to our panel of experts who today can provide useful information to help us as we weather not only the storms that we have outside and the challenges that we may have with that, but help us weather any of the other storms we may have in our personal or professional life. With that, I'll turn it back over to Bethany.
Thank you, Dr. Roman, for those remarks. I would now like to introduce the participants of today's discussion, and I would like to direct your attention to the programs you received for the complete biographies of each of our participants. I'm going to start with the closest to me. Dr. Natasha Chevet is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Medical and Clinical Psychology at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. Dr. Chevet's primary research focus has been on obesity, eating pathology, and weight stigmatization. Our second panelist, Ms. Karen Hawkins, is a registered dietitian working in the Military Community and Family Policy Office within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. With more than 10 years of public health experience, Ms. Hawkins has developed, coordinated, and evaluated health and nutrition programs throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our third panelist, Ms. Melissa Walker, is a registered dietitian, personal trainer, and proud U.S. Army veteran. Ms. Walker currently works as the Wellness Amenity Program Manager for the General Services Administration. In her current role, Ms. Walker manages and oversees the development, promotion, and implementation of facility-based health and wellness programs for GSA, such as FitWell, the Concessions Program, fitness facilities, and health units. Our fourth panelist, Dr. Jonathan Scott, is a senior scientist and nutritionist at the Consortium for Health and Military Performance and adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Military and Emergency Medicine at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. Dr. Scott conducts research for the Department of Defense on a variety of topics related to nutrition. Our final panelist is Dr. Tricia Pasoda, a nutritionist with the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion at the United States Department of Agriculture, where she is responsible for developing evidence-based dietary guidance and promoting the dietary guidelines for Americans through a wide range of nutrition marketing and communication strategies. Let's give them a warm welcome one more time. Today's discussion will be moderated by another special guest, Lieutenant Colonel Janelle McCauley. Lieutenant Colonel McCauley is joining us today from Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in New Jersey, although she was formerly here in the building working at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, so we're happy to have her back. At Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, she currently serves as the commander of the 305th Operations Support Squadron. And when we had a lot of phone tag back and forth trying to coordinate some details, and when I did finally get a hold of her, she very nonchalantly said, I'm just trying to get 2 major airfields cleared off. We're digging out from the snow. And I was like, oh, is that all you're doing? Like, no big deal. But I say that just to say how happy we are that you were willing and able to make this trip all the way out here just for this. So we are thrilled to have you here. Outside of the office, Lieutenant Colonel McCauley has a PhD in the field of strategic health and human performance, as well as being a certified health coach with a certificate in plant-based nutrition. She specializes in improving the performance of employees of large organizations through a focus on nutrition, fitness, mind-body balance, and optimal medical health practices. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Colonel McCauley to the stage to get our discussion started.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that introduction. Good morning to everyone. I will be your moderator for today's panel discussion. Over the next hour, I will pose questions to our panel members based on the questions we received in advance. Some questions will be posed to specific panel members based on their fields of expertise, while others will be broader and up for open discussion. As a reminder to our panel members, please be sure to speak directly into the microphone or pass it around if that's easiest. As this is being broadcast live on the DLA, throughout the DLA. Please wait for a microphone before you begin speaking. At this time, I'm going to start with the first question. What are the most common nutrition misconceptions that you come across on a daily basis? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe we'll start at the end, or
Sure.
Dr. Passato? Okay.
All right, so I would say first that the common misperceptions that I encounter in the work that I do is that certain food groups need to be eliminated to be healthy. And I think a lot of that comes from different fad diets that are out in the media. And contrary to that, I work at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and our main nutrition education tool is what we call MyPlate, which is a visual representation of how you can balance all the food groups into a healthy diet. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge that we face, is explaining why you need foods from all the food groups to get all the nutrients that your body needs.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we hear where we're at is that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to nutrition. We really know that's not the case. For some individuals, a diet that may be low in carbohydrates may work out really well. For another individual, a vegetarian diet may work out well for them. So really it's about what works out best for you, your family, and your current situation, and really what you're able to maintain over the long haul is what's really key.
So I have a kind of interesting job. So I deal with food service contracts across the GSA inventory. And so I work directly with a lot of our vendors that, like the Sodexo that you have out here. And, you know, we get a lot of customer input as to what they want to see on the menu. So I hear a lot of buzz about, you know, why do so many products have gluten, or why aren't there more vegetarian entrees? And so what I end up dealing with personally is, again, a lot of general education as to how all foods will fit, that even we can promote a healthy cafeteria approach and still provide all the food groups, and also provide options. You know, you can eat a healthy diet, but you can also splurge. You know, it doesn't have to be. And so in our cafeterias at GSA, we are all about options and variety and education. So that's really our approach, making sure that, you know, all foods have a place at the table, and that when we do confront people who are very concerned about a certain food being on our menu or being served in our cafeterias, we can explain to them how, you know, variety and options really are the optimal way of sustaining a healthy diet.
I would have to say that I support that as well. I think there's so much information that is available over the internet today, and we often get caught up with reading this story, the latest stories that are available on the internet regarding what to eat and how much to eat and when to eat and why to eat. Yet, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is when we get home at the end of the day and we have to pull something out for dinner, especially if we have families at home, children, well, what do we have in our kitchen and how much time do we have available to prepare it? And so, as a dietitian, one of the things that I like to focus on when I'm working with people, with clients, is finding out what is in their kitchen or where do they go get their food. Because what's really important is what you do in your life. And what you currently do is what is going to affect you over the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So if you are the type of person that goes out to eat often, well, then figuring out what it is that you go out to eat is really, really critical, because changing behavior does not happen overnight. And don't get caught up in, one of the things I like to say is try not to get caught up in all the information that is available on the internet, because it's so easy to become confused. Sticking with variety and not being too hard on yourself is really important.
So my formal training is as a clinical psychologist, so I come at this topic from more of the eating pathology and obesity side of things. So the biggest sort of dieting misnomer that I see very frequently is that weight is an accurate and reliable proxy for health. And in fact, we know that not to be true at all. So we make a lot of assumptions. We see somebody that might be carrying excess weight, and we might make an assumption about his or her diet or the quality of the nutrition that that person is consuming. And likewise, we might see somebody who is lean, and we might make assumptions that that person is very fit and healthy. So I really want to try to dispel that myth that weight is certainly one index of health, but it is not the only index of health, and it can often be a very misleading index of health.
Great, I think you all covered that very well. I'm going to throw the next question at probably the dietitians. We'll start there with your expertise. So if individuals want to look at easy ways for monitoring their caloric intake, what are some of your suggestions for the ways they can do that?
Well, I think, you know, you do need to have that information available. And one of the things that we are working on in our federal facilities is making sure that the foods, recipes, entrees that are offered are labeled with calorie contents, which is not always easy for every vendor out there to accomplish, because, you know, many of the smaller vendors do not have registered dietitians or people who can do a nutritional analysis on a recipe. But I think, you know, being informed about, you know, portion size, having visuals so that you know what that portion size looks like. I know when I did a lot of personal counseling, it was amazing how, you know, one person's perception of a half a cup is very different than someone else's perception of what a half a cup is. And if calories intake and balance is what, you know, you're going after, you really have to understand, you know, what those portion sizes are and how to correlate that to the overall calorie needs that you have.
And to support that as well, I think there's a variety of apps that are available. I know that there's the Super Tracker. That is one that is available through USDA that can be used for tracking calories if that is something that you're interested in doing with, in regards to looking at how much you're eating and weight management. But there are a number of apps that are available out that can be used for tracking calories as well.
I think it can almost be as simple at times as listening to yourself and listening to your body. if you're really focused on the eating and the eating experience, your body will let you know when you're hungry. It will also let you know when it's full. But when we're distracted, sitting in front of a screen, that's diverting our attention away from what we're doing, we lose sight of that. So it can be as simple as making eating an occasion, whether you're spending that with family, friends, others, or even just by yourself. Focus on the eating. Enjoy the experience.
So I feel bad going back to the tracking discussion when Dr. Scott so eloquently talked about the mindfulness approach to eating. Of course, that's definitely something to encourage, but to follow up on what Ms. Hawkins said, at USDA we do have the Super Tracker tool, which will help you keep track of what you're eating, and it's linked to USDA's nutrition database, so it's a reliable tool, and it will let you know about certain nutrients that you're eating, but also meeting the food groups. You can track physical activity as well, and we are making this more fun. We're seeing that that can get burdensome for people to really track everything that they eat or every activity they do. So there's a lot of quick and easy ways to get around that, not just with Super Tracker, but plenty of other apps that let you, save your favorite meals and for your family and your recipes and things like that. So it makes it more easier to really track what you do, so it doesn't take too much time. But one thing that we're seeing that's really popular nowadays is gamification. So challenging people, you'll see that with Fitbits, how people will challenge each other with their activity. And we're actually really excited that we're launching that with Super Tracker as well, so people can challenge each other. So it doesn't have to be that, did you meet everything in that little box? Because as you can tell from our answers to the first round of question, that there really is so many different ways to be healthy. You don't need to fit certain criteria and check all the boxes. And so that's something that we're really trying to encourage, is just those small changes and small steps approaches. So you can challenge, your family or friends or coworkers to, can you just get food from each food group every day? And, so we're launching those right now, and we've seen a lot of promise, especially among school kids and health classes, where they're just challenge each other to do one little thing to be a little bit healthier. So, if you are a little overwhelmed at the idea of tracking everything, there's a lot of shortcuts or quick and easy apps and tools that you can use that can really support you in your efforts to be healthier, but also make it fun, so that you don't feel burdened by it, but more excited about it. I know that for those of us in our office, when we try these things out, it's kind of fun to challenge each other and see who can get more steps, or who can make sure that they meet the recommendations to get half their plate of fruits and vegetables every day and things like that. So there's a lot of different approaches, but I think it's getting back to what Dr. Scott said earlier about picking what works for you.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of great applications and tips. And as Dr. Scott said, I don't know if many of you have heard, the Japanese have a phrase called harahachibu. And when you listen to your body, that just means you eat till you're about 80% full. If you go past that point, it takes a while for our stomachs and our brains to kind of connect, right? So if you eat to that 80% full, as the Japanese do, that they usually prevent that getting full feeling, and so you don't really have to monitor and count any calories at that point. But there are good tools out there if you are trying to limit those calories. I'd like to turn the next question maybe to Dr. Chevet. Can we open up a discussion on the difference between a diet and a lifestyle?
Absolutely. So this is a common question that I get from my patients, and they say, okay, I'm going to start a diet. I really want to lose weight. And a diet is something that I actually really discourage my patients from undertaking for a number, I see a thumbs up in the audience, for a number of reasons. A diet, first of all, it implies that there's kind of a time limit to it, that this is something that I'm going to go on a diet for a finite period of time. Maybe I'm going to start that diet January 1st, and I'm going to do that diet until I get to this number on the scale, and then what? And that's actually when I end up seeing a lot of my patients is a couple of years after that diet, they did really well, they lost an amount of weight that they were pleased with, but then what? They ended up gaining back that weight, and usually people gain back that weight and then some, and that's what we call the yo-yo dieting phenomenon, that it doesn't usually go back to that set point. It actually exceeds the weight that that person was previously at. So I really encourage sustainable lifestyle changes. And again, I know that my first point had to do with using weight as a proxy for health, and I really discourage you from doing that. And similarly, I urge you to avoid dieting to achieve a certain number on this scale. I think there are a lot more reliable metrics that we can use to gauge our health and our wellness. So we see patients who have lost maybe 5%, 10% of their body weight. They might not feel pleased with that, but from the medical side, we're overjoyed. We see that even with a 5 to 10% loss in body weight, we see a number of health improvements. So that individual might not have gotten to a weight that they feel happy with, or they might not feel that that's a success, but medically, that might be considered a huge success. So focusing less on the scale. And also, I like to ask my patients, is this something that you're going to be happy doing in a year? Is this something that you can see yourself doing when you switch jobs, when you move, when you have a birthday party that you're going to? Because if not, it's probably not something that you want to be undertaking right now. So I usually urge my patients that I see to focus on small, sort of tangible goals that they can accomplish, and whether that's a goal that's a preset calorie limit, or whether it's a goal of, I want to be able to tie my own shoes at the end of the year, and that is my goal, and that's what I'm going to work towards. I think, as Dr. Scott mentioned, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, so whatever is a meaningful, salient goal to you, that's what you should be using. And again, that sort of sustainable lifestyle change. And I think that there's really an enormous overemphasis on individual nutrients, and am I getting enough protein, and did I eat too many carbohydrates? And I think taking a more holistic approach is usually much more beneficial.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
I'll just say too, in this most basic definition, a diet is simply what we eat. So in effect, we're all on a diet, but we're not necessarily dieting per se. And that's really important to keep in mind, as Dr. Chavez brought up, that it's not so much the diet itself that's important, but the lifestyle piece that's really important, and really what is very meaningful to us and to our family and to those that we support.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it to a little bit more in the news type controversial questions. One relates to food dyes. Does anyone want to comment on the current status of aren't they okay for us to consume? I know that's a tough one, but
I can't speak to the science per se as to whether a particular food dye is going to cause, autism or some of the other things you hear. But I think if you focus back generally on eating a healthy diet, you tend to just avoid things that have dyes in them, right? So if you're focusing on fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean protein, you don't come in contact with those things. So if your diet centers around, the cupcake with the, bright red Valentine's Day frosting on top, then you're probably going to be exposed to those types of things. And so regardless of what research is showing in terms of do they cause some type of health impact or not, I think the bigger question to ask is, are you focusing your diet around the right types of foods and avoiding those things that have that in there to begin with?
okay. Dr. Scott?
I'll just make one quick comment too. A lot of times, these big headlines that we see on the news are based on correlational data, and as we know, correlation does not equal causation. One of the graphs that sticks out in my mind that I've seen is the sharp increase in obesity over the last 30 years, mirrored by the sharp increase in bottled water consumption. There's a very strong correlation between those two, but you wouldn't say that drinking bottled water causes obesity. And that's really important to make the distinguish between those two things. And also, I'd say, as far as what the food dyes are concerned, I don't work for the government, I'm a contractor, but that all of these different additives have what is known as generally recognized as safe or GRAS status. So they have gone through some vetting or approval process to be allowed to be used in the food supply. Now, whether or not you choose to consume them is up to the individual, but there has been some process that has been used to determine their safety.
Thank you. I'd like to turn the discussion to what I think is one of the biggest myths. Somebody might say, I am eating gluten-free product, therefore it's healthier for me. Or I am on a gluten-free diet, so I have a healthier diet. Can you kind of discuss how sometimes that can be misleading?
So I think a great example of this is in the 90s when the low-fat, non-fat products hit the scene. Everyone uses the image of the green SnackWell's box. And basically, there was this misperception that because they were low-fat or non-fat, I can eat as many of these cookies as I want, as opposed to really looking at the overall nutrition provided by these products. And so that's, one of the things we're now seeing with gluten-free or, whatever nutrient you want to pick free. It doesn't mean that they don't have other things in them that could be unhealthy. Whether, it was eating all these low-fat cookies because you thought, oh, they must be healthy, they're lower in fat. At the end of the day, they still have calories. So if you eat 10 of them, you're going to likely gain weight because of that. And so that's the other, now what we're seeing with gluten-free and some of these other fads is that just because they don't have a certain nutrient in them doesn't mean that they're nutritious for everyone. Gluten-free products definitely have a place in the market. For people who have celiac disease, they're essential for them. But there's this misconception that because they work for people with this certain disease state that we all need it, and that's not the case. So it's not that I'm anti-gluten-free products. They're important for people who have celiac disease, but they aren't necessary for everyone. And I think you could do that with any of those pick a nutrient type products. And just because something doesn't have sugar added doesn't mean that they didn't put something else in there to add flavor to the product, whether it's sodium or whatnot. So I think that, again, Ms. Walker said, if you get back to just eating healthier, more nutritious foods, you don't really need to even pay attention to that because a lot of the healthiest foods aren't going to have things in them that I hate to say avoid, or there's nothing good or bad. There's a place for everything on our plates and in our lifestyles, but I think that's the main thing to think about with that.
Yeah, I think you covered that one pretty well. Can we just transition that to now discuss, when we talk about gluten, a lot of people think of grains, right? And so grains are evil, right? Well, not all carbs are created equal. So can we discuss that a little bit? The difference between whole grain versus refined, and clarify that a little bit. I don't know if one of the dietitians want to take it, or Dr. Scott?
So, we, in our guidelines at GSA, we emphasize whole grains. We promote that 50% of all the product lines served in our cafeterias are based around whole grains. And, it's a very easy thing for a consumer to look at the ingredient list. If you see the word whole as one of the first ingredients, then you know that they are using whole grains. Whole grains provide, a slew of benefits to your health, and I think there does need to be a recognition that, whole grains are probably a better option than something that's refined. Whole grains often give you more fiber because the grain is intact. You get more nutrients, where when you are looking at a processed grain, they've taken away the hull and the shaft of the grain, and so you're only left with the gluten part, which isn't going to provide you as many nutrients. So I do think there is benefit in looking for whole grain products. I think the other benefit is that they're more satiating, so they make you feel full. So when you eat a whole grain product and you are mindful of enjoying the food and slowing down and taking in the atmosphere, you're also just going to feel that 80% full, the Japanese approach, quicker than if you're eating a lot of refined grains. The great thing too is there's some really great products out there. Whole grain pasta now, I pull this one over on my husband all the time. He claims he doesn't like whole grain pasta, but I use it all the time and he doesn't even know it. So I don't mention it to him. I just go with the flow, and he thinks he's happily eating the refined pasta, and I'm making him healthy stealthily. So.
I would also support that as well with the whole grains. I think that, again, it comes back to what is in the media, and a lot of folks are are following, gluten-free, that does not mean that you need to follow gluten-free to be healthy. Choosing whole grains is going to be a good way to go. We do recommend that.
Great. Okay, this one will be for each of you. We all know that there's no panacea for weight loss. There's a diet magic pill does not exist. So if you had to give your best tip for where to begin to start if you are looking for a weight loss plan, what would that be?
So this is one that I think is hopefully pretty easy to implement, but I would say if you have to only target one thing, it would be those sugar-sweetened beverages. We know that that is the single greatest contributor to our overall calorie intake of any other food. So I would say if nothing else, if you want to keep everything else the same and just eliminate or reduce those sugar-sweetened beverages, you're going to be in much better shape. And I think when I say sugar-sweetened beverages, sometimes the first thing that jumps to mind is Coke or Pepsi, and we might be thinking, oh, well, I don't drink Coke or Pepsi. But what about sports drinks? What about energy drinks? What about coffee drinks? Again, this is something, and I can talk a little bit more about sugar-sweet beverages, but our body consumes them in a way that's very different from calories that we get from solid foods. So when we ingest 150 calories of a sugar-sweetened beverage, our body fails to compensate for it later. So if we have a 150 calorie Snicker bar, we're not going to eat as much later in the day because our body is compensating for having consumed those calories. When we ingest calories in a liquid form, our body kind of ignores it. So we're usually eating the same amount as usual, plus those added calories from those sugar-sweetened beverages. So that would be my number one tip if you have to start somewhere.
And with reducing your sugar-sweetened beverages, to help fill in for it or replace it, water is key. That's an ideal solution. One of the things that I suggest is carrying a water bottle with you as much as you can throughout the day, because that will help you to make sure you're getting enough water during the day.
I think over time, the one tip that I have seen being the most successful with my clients is moderation. I think it's a mistake to go into any type of program thinking that you're going to eliminate a lot of foods. Everyone has their favorite foods. Everyone enjoys things, at the dinner table. There's tradition around foods, and I've had people who, want to eat the tofu turkey at Thanksgiving, and I'm like, really? Come on, you're not going to eat a tofu turkey at Thanksgiving, right? But maybe instead of eating, 2 pounds of turkey, you could eat half a pound of turkey. So I think the idea of, looking at what you enjoy about food, and instead of eliminating things that you enjoy, just cut down on them. Either eat them less frequently or eat them in smaller portions. And I think a great example is in restaurants now, where you see the petite desserts. So it's like a cheesecake, but instead of it being 700 calories, it comes in a little shot glass. So you get the taste of it, and if mindful, you eat it slow and enjoy it. Sometimes you still feel that satisfaction of having the dessert, but you're not getting all the calories.
I'll take a non-food approach with this answer, even though we're discussing food today. And my top tip would be to prioritize sleep. Sleep is number one, and people always ask me my top take-home tips. It's sleep. Prioritizing 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. We hear it time and time again, but every day we're learning more and more about the power and the benefits of sleep. And if we can really get our brain to be able to reset and be cognitively engaged throughout our day, it really makes making the easy decision the way to go, whether it's through food, physical activity, smoking cessation, drinking more water. All of those decisions become a lot easier when our body has had the chance to reset. It makes us more productive at our work. So the follow-on to that is finding what tips work out best for you as far as being able to prioritize that 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I do not, and I can respect that. And again, trying to work through what would be some appropriate strategies.
For those of you who didn't hear, he was asked if he had children. And I understand that relates to the amount of sleep people can get. So going last, I think that it gives me a disadvantage, but also an advantage, because I feel like a lot of things that I might have suggested have already been suggested. So instead of being repetitive of what I think are some good suggestions, I will offer some others. Or one, I know I need to pick one. But I think that the small steps approach is really, research shows over and over again that it's successful. So instead of trying to change your whole lifestyle at once, to do things gradually, and starting with what might be manageable for you. If this week it's carrying a water bottle around, and in a month it's cutting back on maybe having, 1 soda a day instead of 2 or something like that. Because then it gets ingrained in your lifestyle. It's your new normal. And so I think I've seen that, when I did one-on-one patient practice, that was what I saw was the biggest predictor of success long term, as opposed to the people who followed a diet for a set amount of time. I saw many people who would come back, as Dr. Chevet said, 5 years later or 10 years later, because it was a time-bound, usually more extreme approach, where those people that are able to sustain weight loss and maintain a healthy weight long term do those small steps. So I would encourage you to start with those little things, and once they become your new habit, build in something else.
Great. I think that was, everyone got some great tips from all of you on how to incorporate get that healthy start, right, for weight loss and for overall health. Now, well, I'll do another one where each of you can kind of give your tip, because I know we're all busy. Eating healthy food sounds like it's a very easy thing to do, but it is difficult when you have a busy life and you have kids, right? So what would be some of your tips for maybe healthy snacks on the go? I know I'll kind of start. One of my things, it's all in the prep. And I know with kids that makes it difficult, but I bring my kids into the prep on Sunday. If you go to the grocery store, you come home, you prep little sections in the refrigerator where my kids can just grab grapes or grab their carrots, and there's already pre-dished out peanut butter for them. So I don't know if you have any similar healthy tips for how to make it easier to eat healthy on the go.
So I'm all for the pre-prepping, because I think that you will find that time, even whether there's children around or whatnot, whether it's your decompressing at the end of the day and do it while you have the news on or a favorite TV show. So I'm all about prepping ahead of time. And then I think, although it's not always the most cost effective, there is plenty of things available that you can get for grab and go, whether it's pre-portioned packets of nuts or, string cheeses or things like that. And you can pair things together. There's plenty of grab and go fruits like apples and bananas and pears, and clementines are great this time of year. So I think I would encourage people to not make it too difficult for themselves, to really take advantage of what is naturally grab and go, and then when you do have the time, to prep ahead.
I think other things we can do too when we're in a rush and looking to grab and go, we continue to come back to the fruits and veg. Don't neglect those in the frozen section. Frozen fruits and vegetables certainly have a place, and the vegetables that stick out in my mind are the ones that come in the bag that you just throw in the microwave and they'll steam right there and they'll be done in 3 or 4 minutes. You're really not losing any of the nutritional quality there. Now you may want to be mindful of some of the different vegetables that have cheese sauces added to them, but if that's what you get for your kids to eat, their veggies, then that would be a compromise they would be more than happy to make. That is fine. With fruits, even looking at some of your canned fruits that are in their own juice or the individually prepackaged portion-sized, whether that's the oranges, the pineapples, etc., that can be a very easy fix to not getting in enough fruits and vegetables. And it seems as if those microwave vegetables are on sale for $1 every other week, depending on which grocery store you shop at. So they're really not going to break the bank. And it's a nice way of, well, I don't want to buy something fresh because I'm not really sure how to prepare it, or it goes bad before I can use it. That can be a really easy way to bump up, your fruit and veggies that you're consuming throughout the day.
So since I deal a lot with retail and restaurants and food service, I will answer from the perspective of you didn't make it out the door with something pre-prepped. You're heading to work and you know you're going to be eating out. for lunch. So one of the things that we're working on is ensuring that all our cafeterias are providing healthy food. But I think it's important for people to seek out those restaurants and eateries and delis that are near where you work and find those locations that offer healthy choices. And if you're not sure if something is healthy, ask the manager, ask the owner to provide nutrition information. If people will consistently ask for that, then they will provide it. So I think it's really important to know that, this deli down the street has low sodium, really delicious turkey breast sandwiches on whole grain, and it's a normal portion size, and I know if I go there, I'm gonna get something healthy. And I think it's important to research and search those things out once, you're done, and then you have a go-to spot when you need to eat healthy on the run.
This one is this one's for the moms and dads in the room that are on the run a lot with their kids. Something I did with my kids when they were younger, I would keep the boxes of the lower sugar granola bars in the car as an emergency, and also keeping bags of apples and oranges as well, because even if you don't have time on the weekend to do that prep that you would like to do, or that would be very beneficial if you did do it for your family, keeping those things around, and of course, keeping an eye on them to make sure that they're not going bad, getting rid of them after a week or so. But that's just one other idea that can help you with getting some of the quick, easy foods into your eating on a daily basis.
So I feel like there's not that much left that hasn't been said. These have all been fantastic suggestions. So sort of piggybacking on what some of the others have said, some of the rationale for having those quick and easy snacks is because we know that when people are going a long time without eating, it sort of depletes our cognitive resources. So I don't know about you guys, but if I'm really hungry, I'm not going to make myself a salad. That's just the last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to grab something that's tasty and that's quick. So what you want to do is you want to kind of preempt that from happening. It's not about willpower. I want to underscore that here. It's not about willpower. If you're so hungry, or if you've been going hours without eating, or you've had a stressful day, anyone is going to reach for something that's quick and easy. So what you want to be sure of is that what is quick and easy is going to be on the more healthful side than not. So planning ahead, I think, is a really big one. Even if it's just going to Costco, getting a big thing of granola bars and making sure that you always have one of those in your bag. Maybe it's not the best option, but it certainly beats driving home starving and then opening the fridge and then eating everything you can get your hands on when you're so depleted and exhausted and starving. So I think just being planful about that can help to kind of preempt some of those overeating episodes that I know a lot of us might encounter, especially towards the end of the long day.
And Dr. Chevet, I think you were describing me the other day. I was very hangry. I'm sure a lot of you have probably experienced that before. All right, I'm going to turn into the next topic, and we'll lead ourselves down to Dr. Pasoda and get her USDA perspective. But food labeling, as I think we'll address that topic next, because I think in my experience, many people can get confused as to what is on the front of a box versus the back of the box. One thing that I found surprising when I first learned it, but when you look at those grams of sugar, you need to divide by 4, and that tells you how many teaspoons of sugar are actually in a serving size. And so many cereals, so if you look at your children's cereals, they might be having as much sugar in their cereal as if they were eating a Twinkie before they head to school. So it's something that you should definitely bring into your cross-check and start looking at if you haven't already. So I'm looking for any other tips you might have on how to decipher food labels.
Sure. So food labeling, it's a huge issue now, and it's really, really important because when we're shopping, we're busy, and none of us have time to decipher the hieroglyphics on the side of the box. It doesn't make sense. It's confusing. Certain products have it on one place, certain products have it on another. So I really urge all of you to kind of be cynical shoppers. And I know that sounds bad, but we've had a lot of trouble with the food industry in the past decade with really deceptive, misleading food labels. I don't know if any of you remember the Smart Choices. That was a big controversy about 6 years ago, where Smart Choices was a label that was kind of slapped on the front of products, and it was a big green, picture, and it caught your eye, and it looked like it was something that was healthy because it said Smart Choices. Well, it turns out we actually did thorough analyses of the nutritional content of some of those products that were labeled Smart Choices. They were awful. They were dismal because there was no consensus scientifically about what constituted a smart choice and what didn't. And we continue to see that issue. So actually smart choices, after all that controversy, they did have to discontinue that. So you will no longer see that, which is great. However, in its place, we now see on boxes of Fruit Loops made with whole grains, or on a box of fruit snacks contains real fruit juice. This is really tough to decipher because it sounds healthful. It sounds like you're doing something good. And again, we don't want to say that any products are off limits, but you do want to be smart when you're shopping and not fall into that trap that we all would of seeing, oh, now has 4 grams of fiber, now with extra protein. Kind of use common sense. I know that's the least helpful advice I could give you, but if there's a product that you don't think is particularly healthy, but then you see, made with whole grains, made with fiber, try to kind of see through that a little bit and recognize that the food industry, and I don't want to be polarizing here, but there are certainly incentives that the food industry is pursuing by labeling certain products as maybe being more healthy than they actually are. So being sort of cynical when you're seeing those products and trying to see through what might be misleading, what might be deceptive. And one other aspect of food labeling that can be so difficult is portion sizes. So sometimes we'll get a bag of chips or a box of cookies and it says, for 1 serving size, and it doesn't seem so bad, but then it turns out that that bag of chips actually has 2 serving sizes in it, not just 1. So really paying attention to how many servings are in a particular package.
Okay, so if you're in the grocery store and you're shopping and you do happen to be one of those people that reads labels, there are a few of us that do that, besides just dietitians. What I suggest is that you look at the first 3 ingredients because that is what your product contains the most of. Everything else is pretty much fillers after that. But if you do read labels and you want to know what's in the food you're buying, look at the first ingredients. Other folks are also going to suggest that you just shop the perimeter of a store. What I like to work with people and tell them to do is where do we get our rice? Where do we get our canned beans? Where do we get some of the other grains and things? They're all in the center of the store. So yes, shopping the perimeter can help you to avoid having to read too many labels. However, there are a lot of foods that are in the center of the store that are very, very good foods to choose and to eat.
I think one of the more beneficial pieces of food labels is the comparison aspect. So when you really break it down, honestly, what I feel most people gain in terms of reading a label is if you have this yogurt, and this yogurt, you flip it over and you're going to see, okay, one has 180 calories, this one has 300, and this one has 80. If you don't get any further than that, you at least know that if calories are a concern to you, this particular product has 80 calories, you might choose that one. And I think that's why kind of the front of package labeling where they're just giving you the calorie count, particularly like in vending machines where you don't have the opportunity to grab the product, turn it over and see it, is helpful. If people see a row of chips and they're not really tuned in to one is baked and one is deep fried, but they see one has 110 calories, the other one has 250, hopefully they'll choose the 110 version as a healthier option just to manage their calories. So I think that's probably, for me, what I've seen as most beneficial is being able to compare products against one another.
This is tough. Many of them have already been said. I'll hear what Dr. Pasoda has to say and maybe weigh in afterwards.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Pasoda, I could give you another question too if you're ready for it. But
I mean, I think they really did cover what's on a food label and ingredient list.
I think so too. So my next question, you alluded to the MyPlate in your first comments, and I know most of us in the audience probably grew up with the food pyramid, which then shifted to MyPlate. So I was wondering if you could maybe discuss that a little bit, that transition, and then I have a second part of the question because if we talk about the registered guidelines, dietary guidelines, I know that there's some new hot off the press information.
Yes.
I don't know if there's anything you can share on that front.
Of course, that's the office I work in, so I'm happy to give you the latest and greatest.
Perfect.
So as she mentioned, most of us grew up with a food guide pyramid, and there might be one person in the audience, I think, that has probably only been exposed to the plate. But that shifted about 5 years ago when the guidelines came out in 2010. We shifted from the pyramid that we grew up with to a plate. And there was a lot of reasons for that, but the bottom line is it visually, it makes a little more sense to see what should my plate look like. And there's lots of people who debate that certain things should be on the plate, certain things shouldn't be. But what I can tell you is the latest nutrition science, and that is what the plate is based on. And this is for general overall health, and also to reduce your risk for developing chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes. And so the current plate, when you look at it, you'll notice that there's essentially, it looks like 4 quarters on a plate, so divided in half vertically and horizontally, essentially. The one side is going to be fruits and vegetables, so we always encourage make half your plate fruits and vegetables, and then the other side, it's going to be grains, which we encourage half of your grains over the course of a day or a week to be whole grains, which we covered earlier, and then protein, lean protein sources. So it's a little less than a quarter of your plate should be protein. And lean protein sources, whether you're a vegetarian and you choose beans or nuts are fine, whether you choose to consume meat and you choose white poultry meat over dark meat, most of the time, not always, or whatnot. So there's a lot of things that can fit into your plate. And then just off to the side, we have a smaller circle that represents the dairy food group. So whether you have a cup of yogurt, a cup of milk, a piece of cheese. And so one of the questions that we often face in our office is, well, I don't eat on a plate, I eat from a bowl, or I don't have all the food groups at every meal. And this is obviously a limitation. We can't have 15 different plates to show this, but we are working on a lot of resources to translate that for the American public to show that, well, if you are eating from a bowl at breakfast, you can have your whole grain cereal with your lower fat milk if you choose, and throw a banana in there. Well, you're getting most of the food groups. And then at lunch, you might choose to get some more protein, whether it's from meats or whatnot. So we realize that people eat what we call mixed dishes. So you're not eating on a plate like that with your 4 little piles of food and one off to the side, but it's just a general guide for you. So I encourage people, you can check out choosemyplate.gov. We have a lot of great resources, whether it's for families, whether it's for individuals, children, elderly, college kids, et cetera. We have a lot of interactive resources as well. And then as far as the dietary guidelines, the plate is based on the guidelines. So we launched all our updates happen to Choose My Plate and also Super Tracker, the tool I mentioned earlier, on the back end to make sure that they match the recent dietary guidelines that came out. They come out every 5 years from USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services. And the 2015 to 2020 guidelines, there was a lot of press around them. I think a lot of that is due to just the way media has changed with social media and whatnot, but also because understandably commodity groups and industry want to make sure that nothing's said that could hurt their bottom line, essentially. So there was a lot of discussion about different foods and whether they should be in the guidelines and whatnot. But overall, the main message of the guidelines, this edition, is to eat an overall healthy pattern of food. So to get away from thinking, oh, did I meet the limit for fat? Did I stay below it? Did I get enough X amount of servings of fruit or dairy each day or each meal? And it's just about overall eating that healthy pattern so that you don't feel constricted at each meal. And the healthy pattern can look very different for different people, whether there's recommendations in there based on what the average American eats and how to make that healthier. There's also recommendations in the guidelines for if you choose a vegetarian diet, how you can still meet all your nutritional needs through that pattern. And we also included a Mediterranean-style diet because there's a lot of research to show that a Mediterranean-style diet is associated with lower risk of disease. So there's a lot of information in there, and I could talk about a while, but I don't want to hold up the time. So if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I would encourage people, our consumer-facing information is choosemyplate.gov and supertracker.usda.gov, and those will provide you with resources and tools to really implement the best guidance for nutrition right now that's based on the latest and greatest science.